This video is going to show you how to enter a paycheck for yourself or any other employees. And this is assuming that you are not using the QuickBooks Intuit Payroll. So for example, if you're using Paychex, ADP, or some other third-party vendor, or if you're even calculating your payroll yourself. This is just for showing you how to record things in QuickBooks Online so that it matches what comes into your bank. The first thing you want to do is for every pay period, you'll want to go ahead and record the check. And you can do that by going up into the plus sign and clicking on check. Now, in this case, I already have an example entered, so I'm going to pull that from my history. And I'm going to go through each of the items to show you exactly how you need to enter these checks. One of the first things is it's important that you select the employee name for the payee and that that employee is a vendor. You do not want to set up this employee as an employee in QuickBooks Online. An employee should only be used if you use the payroll from Intuit. So if you use Intuit Payroll, then you will have employees as the type of a name. Otherwise, you'll want to make sure that your employee name is a vendor. That way you can access this information or any checks that you write to that employee at any time by just going to the vendor center. So that's important. So in this case, you would just put in your name or the employee's name as the vendor and select that when you record this check. The next thing, of course, is you want to make sure that you select the proper bank account that the money for this payroll paycheck is going to come out of. And here's you would want to make sure that you have your complete address for that employee filled out. And then for the payment date, you will want to select the actual payroll date. And dates, as you know, in QuickBooks are very, very critical. So in this case, you want to make sure that this is the date of the payroll period. So, and that's going to vary depending on the frequency in which you pay yourself or your employees. Over in check number, you can put DD if it's a direct deposit, meaning that, it comes automatically out of the bank account. Or if you're going to print a check, you can put the check number here, or you can say print later. Okay, so either of those. But it's very important that you fill out what's actually happening over here. So if there is a check number that you're going to print, go ahead and record that here. Otherwise, print it later. Then, as far as the accounts, and this is very important, typically what you want to do is you want to record your gross amount, the gross, portion of your salary. You want to record that to an account called wages, or sometimes it's called wages and salaries. Now, if you're an officer of the company, what some accountants like to see is a breakdown of officer wages versus employee wages. If it's just yourself, you can just use one account called wages and salaries, and that account is an expense account. So if you don't have one set up, you would go ahead and click on Add New, and you would click on an expense. So that's the first thing you want to do is you want to record your gross salary portion to wages and salaries. And you put that in as a positive number. So if you, get $1,000, $2,000, or if it's a, whatever amount that is, you want to record that here. Then on the next line, what you want to do is you want to record all the taxes that were taken out of your paycheck. So you know that when you get a paycheck, unfortunately, you don't get the whole gross amount. You only get the net amount. So what you need to do is you need to deduct all of the payroll liabilities that came out. Now, there are a number of ways to do that. I like to do things in the simplest manner. So what I encourage my clients to do is to just use one payroll liability account. And again, this is very important that it's an other current liability and that it's just called payroll liabilities. And then what you're going to do is you're going to record that as a negative amount, which of course reduces your gross pay. And so that you can see up here in the right-hand corner, this net amount should be equal to your take-home pay. Now, some people like to record things in a little more detail than just payroll liabilities. If that's the case, what you can do is you can create a separate payroll liability account for each of the federal and the state taxes. Now, that's not mandatory. If you want to keep things simple, just select one payroll liability account. If you really do want to track for each one, you can go ahead and create separate payroll liabilities accounts. But all the money that comes out of your employees or your paychecks should be a payroll liability. There are going to be instances where you would have like child support or some other payments that are coming out of the employee's checks. Perhaps they have garnished wages. In those cases, you do want to create a separate liability account that you want to deduct the portion that's being withheld from their paycheck and include that. And then when you go to pay that amount, then you would record the payment to the proper entity and then offset against that account. And I'll go into detail on that in a minute. But most of the time, if you don't have any other garnishments or child support or anything else, most of the time you can record these paychecks as simply the wages minus your payroll liabilities or your taxes that are coming out. And so once you record that, then the second thing that you want to record is your payroll taxes. Because of course, every time you run a payroll, not only do taxes come out of the employee's paychecks, but the company has to pay some taxes as well. And how I record that is I recommend that you set up a vendor called Payroll Taxes. And again, this is just, I'm going to show you one of the easiest ways to record your payroll. And so for every pay period, what you want to do is you want to record again another check for the payroll taxes because that money is going to come out of your bank as well. And you can do that, of course, by going into the plus sign and recording a check or an expense. This is the example that I'm gonna be showing you. So for every payroll period, you want to, again, you can just use payroll taxes. That way you don't have to worry about breaking it down by, the federal government or the state. And again, this is just the simplest form for recording your payroll inside of your QuickBooks Online. And so what you want to do is you need to break down the amount of money taken out of each of your checks. That is the employee portion and the employer portion. Okay, so in this case, $553 is going to come out of your bank, and part of that is going to be for the portion that came out of your paycheck. So this was that payroll liability account that we listed as a negative $325 on your paycheck. In this case, it's going to be a positive $325. So what that's going to do is that's going to actually negate each other. So the net result in this payroll liability account is going to be zero because the first portion is going to be a negative from when it came out of your paycheck. And now we're going to record it as a positive when we're paying the tax entity. And so it's going to zero it out. Then the second part of this payment is going to be the employer portion of the taxes that you need to pay to either the state or the federal government. And again, I choose to put it all together into just one employer paid payroll taxes. That would be state and federal. Now, most of the time, this is only going to be for the federal taxes that the employer has to pay for. The employer typically does not pay any state taxes, income taxes, up and above what you take out of the employee's paycheck. Okay, so this is usually going to be just a federal amount, but unless that changes, you just want to record the portion of the taxes that are the employer's responsibilities up and above what was taken out of the employee's checks. Now, to get this dollar amount, you're going to have to run a payroll summary report or some other report from your third-party vendors such as Paychex or ADP. So once you record this one, and again, this one would probably be an electronic funds transfer or money that was taken out automatically, so rather than a check. So you want to record the payroll taxes. Now what will happen is once those funds clear your bank, they'll come into your bank feed, and then you should see a matching transaction. So this will say match instead of add or transfer. It'll have a match here, and it should match exactly what comes out of your checking account or your payroll account. I also recommend that you kind of check things once in a while to make sure that things are being recorded properly. Every month, you'll want to run a profit and loss and a balance sheet just to make sure that everything is being recorded properly. So if you click on your profit and loss from your reports, and in this case, I'm going to do this year, but normally you want to just look at your last month. You can see down here that we have the wages that were paid from the company. And again, that's the gross amount because that's what the company pays. And then you have the employer paid portion of the taxes that were taken out because the company can deduct that as an expense. So we can see that that payroll is being recorded properly. Now, to make sure that the liability portion is clearing out, we want to take a look at the balance sheet. We go to Reports and click on the balance sheet. And again, just for our example here, I'm going to change this to this year. You want to scroll down on your balance sheet until you come to your liability portion. You can see here that the account that we used in our example, the payroll liabilities account, is zero. And if we click on this $0 to see the detail, we can see that here was the $325 that was taken out in taxes from the employee's check. And then when we paid the payroll taxes, it negated that so that the balance is zero. Now, for these other taxes down below, that is just an example that I use for showing how to record, if you want to record in detail, the federal versus the state taxes, rather than rolling them up into one payroll liability account. So that's it. That's how you record properly, but simply, your payroll checks into QuickBooks Online. I hope it helps. If you have any questions, just let me know.